The B Plus Wrestling Podcast.
The Moose.
Might not be an A, but you are a B plus.
Check it out! Here we go! You wanna mess with us? 'Cause we're steady on the ground, steady on the ground.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen out there in the B Plus land. I'm your host, Mr Myster1ous, and welcome to All the Rest, the wrestling podcast where we cover all the wrestling news in this bizarre, weird, wacky world that we all call professional wrestling. It's good to get back into the swing of things. I'm actually pretty happy to talk about the wrestling news this week. I've had a pretty interesting week. I discovered someone helped me uncover a link to all 4 seasons of Lucha Underground. Now, this is actually especially exciting for me because when I first got into B+, I was reviewing the very tail end of Lucha Underground. So I only reviewed 4 or 5 matches of season 4, and then Lucha Underground is essentially buried at this point. But I wanted to have a look at it, and now there is a link for Australians to actually watch it in its entirety. So I have been doing an episode a day, and I am pleasantly happy. We've got Glow Season 3 has come out, so I'm getting ready to binge watch that after I'm done talking to you guys. And yeah, I'm hoping down the line we have a nice little Glow Season 3 podcast for you all, or a Lucha Underground seasons, whether by season or the whole series. I want to try and do a whole bunch of different variety stuff for you guys, and just as well cover the wrestling news from this week, because there is a bit to unpack here, but we're going to do it. We're going to persevere, and you know what? We're going to have some fun. We're going to be covering a bit of MLW news, a bit of AEW, a bit of NWA with the revelation of what they're going on with. You have the weird WWE news, because you always have weird WWE news, and then just any other story that comes across my desk, because I need to transfer this from my brain to yours. It's like a knowledge, through osmosis, but I'm doing it through radio waves. So the moment you hear it, it's stuck in your head forever and ever and ever. I'm just kidding, guys. Let's get started here. MLW 69, main evented by Davey Boy Smith Jr., going up against Timothy Thatcher. We had this episode on commentary. You had the ragtag team of Rich Burkini and Tony Schiavone. Schiavone is back. It's so good to hear him. I don't know if this is permanent. I would like to think so, because of all the stuff that's happened with Jim Cornette. And I'm very glad that it's just good to hear his voice again. He has such a color commentator voice, and he works well for the style of MLW, like the sports-centric feel that they go for, which is probably why AEW are trying to acquire him for their sports center. Whether he can do both, I have no idea at this point, but regardless, just the moment I saw him and heard him, it's just, we missed you, Tony. We missed you very much. Opening match here, we have Loki versus Jimmy Yuta, and of course we've had Loki knocking out fools left, right, and center for the past month now, and then you had the match last week with Ricky Martinez, which actually went a good few minutes before Loki made Ricky Martinez pass out to the Dragon Sleeper. So I was very curious if we were going to go back to the knockouts, or people from now on were actually going to start giving Loki a bit of a challenge. But my thoughts were answered pretty much in the first 25 seconds, because after what feels like months, it's been a while since we've seen Jimmy Uter in MLW. He had a feud with Jason Cade back at the start of the year, and then Jason Cade got injured. He might have left, I don't know. But yeah, he was having this middleweight feud with him and then MJF, and then MJF got injured. It was all a mess. But now he's back, and he's ready to face off against the professional Loki. How did he go? He got his ass knocked out. Loki just kung fu'd him right in the face with a teep kick. It was, you want to MMA knockout at its finest. Just watch that kick. Just watch that match, if you can call it that. It's only about 25, 30 seconds of, Loki just sussing out exactly what Yuta's going to do, and then boom, right in the kisser. It was pretty much, I can't remember the UFC, like, was it 126, 125, somewhere around there. Anderson Silva defeating Vitor Belfort, and after the match, Loki cut a promo walking backstage. He's saying right foot to the hospital, left foot to the grave, which is like Mirko Kokrop's signature line. And he has unfinished business, so stay tuned. So that unfinished business could mean two things. The way that this episode went, I think we know which way it's heading. So the next little thing, Contra is in the War Chamber. They have challenged Tom Lawler and the Von Erichs, right? Contra accepts, but it will be a 4-on-4 match for the War Chamber. What is the War Chamber? It's War Games. It's the War Games, but MLW sold the rights back to WWE for War Games, so now they can use it again, and MLW, they just use War Chamber, which, that's fine. You know what it is. It doesn't matter. But Jacob Fatu is going to bust heads open all the way down to the white meat. It's like, oh, he's getting Samoan werewolf. Like, he could probably do that, to be fair. Joseph Samael said the Von Erichs are blinded by pride, and Simon Gotch added that they will be blinded by something far worse. Ooh, a bit of foreshadowing there. We'll see what happens here. All hail Contra. 4-on-4. We have 3 members on each team at the moment, and their mystery partners who will be answering. We have this next segment, which, if you listened last week, I'm probably going to be repeating myself, but it bears repeating. So Conan met with Selena and her manservant, Jimmy Havoc. Like, Havoc's kind of taken the role of Martinez in her errand boy in a weird way. Just cause. About returning her telephone. Conan has 3 non-negotiable demands, or he will release the contents of Selena's phone to the public. He's going to, because she was going to blackmail him, he's going to blackmail her, but they're describing last week, like, oh, it's some Triple X shit. I know you all want to see it because you're all perverts. And yeah, Conan, that's revenge porn. You really need to stop this right now. So the first of his demands. What are his demands? The first is a very bizarre one. So the first is actually that LA Park and Jimmy Havoc have a match together, which I don't understand how that is leverage. I don't understand. Like, they have a match. Okay, righto. And he's trying to sound clever, so he's saying that he's going to make a soup of her own chocolate, which sounds dirty, but it sounds like a weird entendre. But it's trying to make a fancy way of saying that he'll turn the tables on what she has planned. So the first thing he wanted was for LA Park and Jimmy Havoc to have a match. And at first she's like, no, but then just like, oh yeah, fair enough. We'll see what happens there. Like, I'm not against LA Park and Jimmy Havoc fighting. I'm just very confused at how that happened. Like, they could have come up with a far better reason than this, but Conan, like, is he gunning for Jimmy Havoc? I don't know. Regardless, since Jimmy Havoc is AEW bound exclusively in the next month now, I'm going to say, LA Park is probably going to kill him. But it's going to be glorious to watch. It's going to be glorious to watch, whether that happens next week or the week after. I want to see that match. I'm not happy with how it's happened. I want MLW to stop this blackmail storyline, because it's the connotations and the implications of it. It just makes me a bit uncomfortable. But we'll see what happens. I'm hoping like 2 more episodes, 2 more negotiations, and then we're done. Like, I'm hoping there's nothing, like decrepit or seedy that Conan asked Selena to do. And I just want everyone to get back to the sports-centric style of Major League Wrestling that I love. Is that too much to ask, ladies and gentlemen? That's too much to ask. We have another segment. This time it's the lifestyles of the rich and dynastic. So I got to realize. So you had H2 TV, like the Hart Foundation's TV, their little segments during MLW. They've kind of stopped now. Is it like only the champions can have segments? Is that what's happening here? Like the moment that another member of the Hart Foundation wins the tag titles back, is that how they give them like attention? I don't know. Very, very bizarre. Like I just realized that we've just flat out stopped all the episodes of H2 TV, and newly debuting is the lifestyles of the rich and dynastic. Alexander Hammerstone, Richard Holiday, Aria Blake, and of course MJF, standing in the parking lot of a Porsche dealership. MJF is a little annoyed because Aria scratched his neck. What were they doing? I'll let your minds wander. And he says that she needs to trim her nails or she'll be sent back to etiquette school. God, MJF, he's a delight. He's a delight. They're talking about watches. They're talking about the 91 Hogan tan again. And Holiday is threatening to write a negative Yelp review about the slow service at the Porsche dealership after 5 minutes of waiting. Right? Of course, their talk transitioned to MLW talk. They're talking about how Teddy Hart failed a wellness test, so he's not allowed to invoke his rematch clause for the tag team titles. And Hammerstone follows this up by saying, guys, what's on the wellness policy? And the other two are like, we'll get you clean piss. And like, funny segment. Enjoyed it. Lot of weird implications from this. Like, it's such a throwaway line. But MLW, again, they are a very sports-centric kind of promotion. Like, they try and make it so they're enforcing the weight classes. They have fighters there. They don't have wrestlers. They don't have superstars. They have fighters. There is a big thing with them. Like, a lot of their stars are luchadors, and it's all like a lot of realism. They try and make things as real as they possibly can in how they go about the athleticism and what they do in the middle of the ring. And as part of that, like they'll say that they've fined this star, they've suspended this star, that this star is seeing the disciplinary board and everything else. To have such a throwaway line like Teddy Hart has violated the wellness policy, just like, wouldn't there have been more of a big deal out of that? And it just seemed like to be a butt of a joke, and which is weird because MJF and Teddy Hart, the basis for their rematch clause and everything else was that this was before the dynasty started happening, before like Holiday joined MJF and then Hammerstone joined those two to become the dynasty. At first, the story was like akin to CM Punk, Jeff Hardy levels of just like, no, clean living. Like I'm the bad guy, but I've not been to jail. I've not done drugs. Like, am I really the bad guy? Like, they were really getting deep in that. And now it's just such a throwaway thing. Now, and it confuses me as well because there are 3 members of the Hart Foundation. Like, if Teddy Hart can't enact his rematch clause, like, then that means like Davey Boy and Brian Pillman should be able to. Like, that's how that should work. And yes, Teddy is like, you can just say like he's the middleweight champion. He's got better things to deal with, like facing off against Austin Aries at some point down the line, which I can't wait until that happens. I've nearly forgotten about it. It's been a few weeks, but I don't like the implication. Just like they're going to make us care about this story, and then all of a sudden, just like that's their punchline for this joke for the segment. It was funny. I laughed, but I don't know. It seems weird to just make that such a throwaway thing. I'm sorry if I'm rambling or if that doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but if they want to make us really care and want to make us really see this as a big deal, like when they have stars like get suspended, or like if they file a drug test or something, and they want to make it seem like very sports promotion, enforce that with everything. And like, you can have these segments, like, which I enjoyed, but I don't know, a little bit more consistency, please, MLW, in the future. We have another segment. The Spirit Squad are back in Major League Wrestling, words I never thought I'd say in 2019. But the Spirit Squad are back in Major League Wrestling, having an open workout. Now, Kenny Doane and Mike Mondo, they are the last members of the SWO, or the Squad World Order, as many people might know them. Because Mike Mondo's come out with the whistle, and he's got, instead of NWO, it's the SWO. He's twerking, he's got a big whistle, he's a bloody moron, but he knows exactly that he's just pissing everyone off. Kenny had some words for the New York crowd. They were lacking spirit, sports references, everything else. They said that they are here in MLW's tag team division because they've earned it, not because of their last names. The Spirit World Order issued an open challenge while insulting the Hearts and the Von Erichs. And it's like, this was all funny. And then they're just like, I don't care who answers the call. It can be like such and such. It can be the Von Erichs or whatever. It's the Von Erichs. That's not how you do that talk. Like, when you talk about, like, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Austin, The Rock, or whatever. You don't expect one of those people you've mentioned to actually show up. It's meant to be someone even, like, more random. When you say that kind of talk, like, I don't care who walks through the door. It can be you. It can be you. And then it turns out to be someone even higher. That's how that talk works. Regardless, the Von Erich brothers answer the call. The match was just an extended beatdown, but pretty much to the point where they had a commercial break, and throughout the entire match, the Von Erichs Titantron entrance was still playing in the background. Like, I don't know whether it was a glitch or they couldn't turn it off. It was weird, but yeah, it kind of made you realize who was going to win this one, this impromptu matchup. Marshall cleaned the house with a power slam and a moonsault. Mondo broke the count, so Marshall and Ross finished the job with an Iron Claw slam onto Kenny. And yeah, Von Erichs won as if it wasn't very obvious. After the match, though, that's where the big meat of this whole segment came. Contra attacked. Now, just as the Von Erichs were getting the upper hand on Samael and Simon Gotch, a shadowy figure emerged from the apron. Spits mist into Marshall's eyes, so they made good on their threat to blind one of the Von Erichs. And it's been revealed, wrestler by the name of Tristan Tai. Now, this news broke a little while ago. I wasn't sure what to make of it. I don't think I mentioned it at all, to be honest. But so it looks like he's going to be the fourth member for Contra versus Tom Law and the Von Erichs in War Chamber. I'm not against it. I was really thinking of like a bigger name, but you know what? Another foot soldier, whatever. If Contra gets another member, maybe they're after all the gold. I don't know. I don't see Contra as this big thing. Like, it's all should be focusing around Fatu. Fatu should be the big juggernaut of this entire operation. Like, he is to a point right now. But I don't know. They've got their priorities wrong. They're still trying to push the group, and just like realize that Fatu is better than all of you. Like, keep pushing Fatu. Put the other ones as like underlings. You'd make it so much better. You'd make it far better. But this 4-on-4 match intrigues me. I feel like the person that should be a part of this matchup now is Low Ki. Low Ki should be the mysterious fourth member. Whether they'll announce it before War Chamber or like just before the match starts, I feel like that's where we're heading. He's got unfinished business with both Selena and with Contra. And I just want to see Loki versus Fatu. I just want to see Loki just pick apart that werewolf in the steel cage. My mind would explode. I would love to see it so much. Those boys would just beat the shit out of each other. And whether the whole thing was like Loki would maybe knock out Gotch and Samael, and then it's just like, you and me, big man, you and me. Like, I'm getting into fantasy booking here. I love the implications of this. But moving on, so because of this whole kerfuffle, they cut to a taped. They actually acknowledge a taped recording from another show, Gringo Loco versus Zenshi. Gringo Loco caught flipping Zenshi, then crushed him with a tombstone pile driver. Loco actually won that match, which is surprising because Loco is usually the jobber for a lot of other talent in MLW. Myron Reed and Jordan Oliver walked through the crowd with their justice protest signs during the match. It did absolutely nothing. There was no point to it at all. It just was what it was. Does that make Gringo Loco the lineal champion for Zenshi's Lucha Libre All-Star Championship? I don't know how that works over there. Like, Zenshi, like, he's a very famous wrestler over there. And as for the main event, now getting into this. All right. Davey Boy Smith had a pre-match interview with Casey Lennox backstage. She's trying to make this segment about the scandalous video of his sister Georgia kissing Alexander Hammerstone. Davey Boy's just like, nah, mind on the match, which, thank God, I was worried. I should have been worried, but spoilers. But this promo is like, it'll be a strong style at its finest. Thatcher will find out why Smith's technique is just elite. Alright, Lennox is trying to still make the issue about his sister. Brian Pillman comes out of nowhere, just like, don't sweat it, girl. If you want to talk about relationships, yeah, give me something. And just takes her away to have a chat. What they'll be doing, I'll let your mind do that for you. But however we got to this, you're just here to watch Thatcher at this point. Thatcher is the best part of this episode. It's the only real the main match we get here, because we've had a pre-tape match, the knockout, and now we got this, which is actually a grappling masterclass in action. Right, the heavyweight grappler in Thatcher versus Davey Boy from the Heart Dungeon. God, it was good. It was so good. And I'm glad that the fans of MLW were so receptive to it, because for opening and closing matches for, God, months and months, we've had like so much Lucha Libre, we've had hardcore matches, we've had a lot of fusion element fights, but we haven't really had a proper real wrestling catch as catch can match. We have not really had that before in MLW. Maybe in like the early episodes when they're trying to experiment with everything, but man, this was great. This was absolutely phenomenal. Like, Thatcher controlled the pace by working Smith's legs. Like, the big flashy maneuver at the start was like a belly to belly suplex by Thatcher off the ropes, right? At one point, Thatcher had Smith in a leg lock, and then Smith counted into a sharpshooter. The crowd went crazy for it, right? A lot of toe-to-toe striking. There was a German suplex. Smith bested Thatcher with 2 German suplexes, and then he did a tiger suplex, which the look on Thatcher's face was just priceless. They timed that one perfectly, right? Thatcher worked in an armbar. Smith broke out of it, but got caught in the triangle choke. Like, Smith used his strength to powerbomb Thatcher, which, again, these are 2 heavyweight guys doing a grappling masterclass, and then we get the big boy moves out in towards the end. Led to the finish where Smith submitted Thatcher to the crossface. Swift, like, great pace, good 20-odd minutes devoted to just watching these guys try lock up, collar over tie up, and just go at it. I loved it. I'm so glad that the fans there were so receptive to it. There were "this is awesome" chants, and I was wondering what was different about this episode. The guy with the air horn wasn't there. There was no air horn in this entire episode. It was so peaceful. It was so relaxing. It's like, those people in crowds, just they try and make shows about them, and you try to ignore them, but uh, I just didn't realize until after I watched the match, and just like the air horn was gone. He's not. He's probably back for the next episode just to spite me. But it was just nice to have an episode away from that kind of thing. Afterwards, now love the match. Did not like this end bit. So Georgia Smith came out to congratulate her brother, right? And Smith had a message for. I keep saying Smith. They're both named Smith. I'm sorry. So Davey Boy and Georgia had an interview. Davey said he's got a message for Hammerstone, and he's saying that Hammerstone's mind games won't work on him. Don't play mind games with me. And Smith is considered coming up for the National Openweight Championship. Like Davey Boy, he never really he got outsmarted in his first chance at the gold, and he closed the promo by saying, "I won't go light on your boyfriend." Drop the mic. Very, very corny promo. I'm not gonna. It was so cheesy. I love Davey. The crowd were popping hard for him, but man, generic babyface promo number 5 in action, and he's trying to make sense of this whole storyline, which Georgia Smith is not selling at all. At all. Like, she's not acting embarrassed, she's not acting shocked, she's not acting angry, like you don't understand what we have is special. None of that shit. And the fact that when you have someone who's not a great promo like Davey Boy, and you're not giving him material to work with, then you get that ending line just like, "No, I won't go easy on your boyfriend," right? And he's calling that relationship mind games. So what's she gonna think? Like, maybe it's just like, no, it's an actual relationship that I don't know, right? I think that the acting is what's getting me as well, and just this bizarre story. I don't see where the end goal is here, right? And how much story we have left with the dynasty before MJF leaves, and then what? Maybe Holiday and Hammerstone can still do some stuff together. I'm confused. I really am. But overall, I did enjoy this episode of MLW, just mainly for Thatcher and Davey Boy. That was pretty much the selling point for this entire thing for me. Absolutely loved it. And yeah, go check it out. We are inching ever closer to their big super fight event in November, their first ever big pay-per-view event. Only about $20, I think, off the top of my head. Go watch it. MLW deserve your praise and support, and I cannot wait to see what they do moving forward here. We better cover some AEW news while I'm going, guys. So how about we cover we had episode 164 of Being the Elite, which was a flashback, which is pretty much Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. They're getting ready for their match for Triple Mania against the Lucha Brothers and Laredo Kid. It's still a rematch from Fyter Fest, top of my head. Fyter Fest, I don't think it was for Fight for the Fallen. But yeah, we had that match, and it might have been Fight for the Fallen. So I'm rambling, but you guys know one of those matches. It was an AEW rematch, and Triple Mania was insane. You need to watch Triple Mania. Like the amount of bonkers things that happen there, and the crowd in Mexico, they just absolutely love it. It's just part of the culture there. That you had Cain Velasquez debut, like alongside Cody Rhodes. You had LA Park return after like 6 years. It was great. But it was basically covering their journey to get to there. And the episode was called Throwback. And it was like a lot of Easter eggs from the very first episodes of Being the Elite, including like the introduction changing to the old school introduction, the music. Yeah, very entertaining. Really, it was covering all that. There wasn't any big announcements except for the very end, which we found out that because AEW's first episode on TNT October 2nd has sold out, well, what's next? episodes 2 and 3. It's saying, where are they going to be happening? Well, everybody. We found out that the second and third tapings will be in Boston, Massachusetts, October 9th at the Agganis Arena, and in Philadelphia, October 16th at the, I can't pronounce it, Licuris Center. I'm hoping that's correct. But yeah, AEW's Twitter has been following a lot of venues across America, which could be potential episode locations moving forward. A lot of them, surprisingly, are where WWE have actually had events before, which I don't see that as like, oh, hell no, like WWE should be pissed off at that. They're going to be pissed off about it anyways. But there might not be, like, in terms of what they're after, they're looking to try and get like a 6,000 to 11,000 people per show. So, and there's probably no other spots in certain towns in America without being there, looking up on a map geographically. Yeah, regardless, so they're slowly making announcements for all those matches. But the real thing we should be talking about from AEW is the Road to All Out episode 4, because man, the revelations in here were awesome. We now know that there was going to be a casino battle royal at All Out, a all-women's casino battle royal. Again, same rules apply from the last one. It's a bit convoluted. It's a bit convoluted excuse for a Rumble match, but you know what? It's entertaining. It is entertaining, and I'm hoping that they've worked out the kinks from the last one. So I'm hoping, yeah, after Double or Nothing, they've kind of figured out what they need to do to make this one work for the ladies. Now, there's only like a dozen or so women announced on the women's roster so far. So they said maybe the winner might be an unknown woman. It might be this woman. And they announce Teal Piper, the daughter of Rowdy Roddy Piper, making her wrestling debut. This is big, right? You had Ronda Rousey, who was given permission by Roddy Piper and by WWE to use the term rowdy for her while she was wrestling, and to have the kilt and everything else, and try and carry on the legacy of Rowdy Roddy Piper. AEW like, well, we're going to just sign his daughter. That's big, right? And to make a star out of her would be a big move, a big empowering move for AEW, for the fans of the disgruntled fans who got lost along the way, who remember the old days, remember of Rowdy Roddy Piper, people trying to kill him for being just such a detestable prick, right? Oh, it was just fantastic news. And we weren't done with all these revelations. So you had Jake the Snake Roberts as a card dealer for AEW. Like, he looks so healthy. First off, I'm so happy for him. But the fact that he was there, like, as this blackjack dealer, that was awesome. A nice little announcement there. And we had a couple other stars announced for the Casino Battle Royal. Ivelisse from Lucha Underground, perfectly timed because I am in the middle of a Lucha Underground marathon. I love it. Ivelisse has finally got out of her Lucha Underground contract, and she can travel across the indie scene. And whether she stays on as a permanent member of the AEW roster, I don't know. I'm hoping, especially when they hit the ground running with their tag team division. Oh, I can't wait. And then the other news, the bitch is back. Jazz, shaved head, new mask, looks like an absolute killer. She's come back from injury. I am so happy. I don't know whether they'll elaborate on exactly on what happened with her having to drop the NWA Women's title, because she just missed out on 1,000 days with that bloody belt. 1,000 days. That is big, right? And then they changed the belt. They brought in a smaller little thing, and it's like Allison Kay, I think it is, off the top of my head. She's now the women's champion. And I had a half a mind to think that maybe Jazz would go back to NWA. She might still, This doesn't necessarily rule it out, but it's just great to see her back. She could be the surprise in this entire thing. And then we ended this road to All Out with a little of a expose on Nyla Rose, just talking about her journey into the world of pro wrestling, accepting who she was. And yeah, that was the episode of Road to All Out this week. Big news, big revelations. I was so excited for this Casino Battle Royal. I never thought I'd say that because I didn't think the first one was all that great. It was entertaining, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I don't see Teal winning. I see Jazz kicking ass and maybe facing off against Awesome Kong at some point. My money's on Britt Baker at the moment, or Smiley Kylie. One of those two, I think, are gonna face off in to crown the new women's champion at the first taping for AEW. It seems like that's in the cards right now. But for now, just bask in the real women's revolution here going on. We had some NWA news. Another big revelation from NWA. Like, of course, last week they cut their ties with Ring of Honor, and now they did a big announcement where, guess what? They are going to be starting their own TV show September 31st, October 1st. They're going to be doing some episodes from Atlanta, Georgia. We don't know anything else at this point, but they want to go back to the old school style of, we are basically in the territory scene again, like from the 70s, right? I love the announcement. I'm so happy for the NWA that they're getting back to this point. I'm very worried though, because again, I don't know if they have the numbers and the funding, momentum behind them to be able to do this. But you know what? They're going to give it a crack. And if nothing else, they're going to try and make new fans out of everybody who are slowly starting to realize about the wrestling scene moving forward. Like it's good that they've got people like Eli Drake there at the moment, like James Storm. They've got their belts on some really great people right now that can help carry that brand, which like is a great idea, because if AEW are there, like people might start exploring like, hey, what else is around? Like the NWA, I remember that back. My granddad used to love that, or I grew up watching that. I can't wait. It's the landscape of wrestling is constantly changing, especially in this last week or so. And before I get into the other big seismic changes from the wrestling world, how about we listen to Greg with our sponsors? Good, we are out of the way with the advertisements. Now let's get into the meat of this entire podcast here. Who has been signed in this world? Who has been injured? Who has left a company? Who wants to leave a company? A lot of stars want to leave their companies at the moment, let's be fair. And just the weird news that come across my desk that I need to share because it needs to be out there in the world. People need to hear this stuff. God damn it. In terms of the signings, as I mentioned to you guys before the advertisements, we had Jazz, Evilise, and Teal Piper. And now for AEW, we have rumors at the moment. So I'll talk about the actual confirmed things before I talk about the rumors. Kiera Hogan has signed a new multi-year deal with Impact Wrestling. I'm happy to hear that. She's been going with a few with Jordan Grace at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if they start doing a little bit of a tag team with her and Madison Rain right now. Like they're little like frenemies right now, I think, at the moment. AEW have signed a new person for their roster, Tanya Brooks, or some people might know her as Rebel, and she's going to be helping with hair and makeup. She's not wrestling for them. She might. She could be one of those unknowns for the Casino Battle Royal, but this is only just announced, so she's actually going to be helping with the hair and makeup for the women's roster for AEW, which is nice, I suppose. Like, obviously, that's an important thing for, like, not just the ladies, but for the guys as well. Like, with a lot of hair and makeup, just the preparation, depending on what some people do. We have a big confirmation for Ring of Honor. Like, they've been taking hits for ages now but there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and its name is Joe Hendry. The former Defiant world champion has been touring the Indies. He used to be a former Impact star. Finally found his home right now with Ring of Honor. He made the announcement on his YouTube channel, which you should go watch. He's a creative like you've never seen before in the wrestling world. He's just one of those guys that is always putting out great content. In terms of the rumor mill at the moment with signings and returns, you have Davey Boy Smith apparently has been announced as apparently 3 different companies are in talks with him to be signing up somewhere. And not that this is indicative of where he'll go, but Davey Boy said he wants to continue working for MLW, which does rule out WWE pretty much because they want everyone exclusive. Maybe they could organize a deal with AEW if he still wants to work with MLW. I don't know if they're able to. I mean, I'm using MJF as an example. I see Court Bauer and Tony Khan as on that same level creatively, and I'm hoping that they could come to an understanding in terms of the exclusivity in America. There'd be a lot of they could do great magic together in terms of collaboration and the talent they have at their disposal. And given the issues with Gato, New Japan does seem unlikely, but you know what? Like, given the roles that are left, like given the promotion that are left, would love to see Davey in Impact. Would love to see him in Ring of Honor. I mean, maybe he'll start appearing in the NWA. Like, there'd definitely be a market there for him. A accomplished tag wrestler, and pretty much everywhere he's gone, he'd be a valuable asset to any company. But that's according to the newsletter. Of course, to the dirt sheets as well. Just make it that what you will. Some other rumors is that Sonata of Los Ingobernables de Japón, of the Evil faction, the tag team, sorry, with Evil, I should say. He's been rumored to maybe court the IWWE. Now, he is a former X Division champion in Impact Wrestling. He has had singles runs in America in a couple of places. They haven't really been that successful. And he's a very accomplished wrestler. I don't know what they do with him in WWE. Again, depends on how much money they throw at him and if he'd be open to that kind of thing. Usually I see the New Japan people, like, they go in, they sign a deal for like 5 years or so, and then they can come back to New Japan and just, towards the tail end of their career, which Sonata's in that bracket. Like, he's only like 31. Maybe. I hope not. I do hope not. It's at that point now with all the signings to WWE that really I want to see a break from all that. Like, for stars to just kind of take a stand. Like, no, I don't care how much money you throw at me. You guys need to check your shit before you reach out to other stars. So, very capable wrestler. I hope he stays with New Japan. But it depends again on where he's at his career and how much money they throw at him. There were rumors that the Big Red Machine Kane was actually meant to be appearing on a couple of house shows to face off against the likes of Braun Strowman, but as you know, he is the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, and so he's a politician now, and he can't really go out there randomly and just like, you know what, I'm going to wrestle a couple matches. Like, later, my constituents, like, I'm going to vent off some frustration under a mask, and through hellfire and brimstone, I shall be back. No, that's not how that works. Apparently, a couple of wrestling sites have actually had a chat to the Knox County, the politicians there, and actually said like, no, he's definitely not being a part of that. So at the moment, it seems like that was just all hearsay. Might happen, but the rumors was that he would have like a match with Braun Strowman. I feel like it's safe to say Kane's retired at this point. It doesn't feel right to have him like pop up when you know, like, now he's just like this politician now. It's bizarre. What an age we live in where like we're worried about this wrestler's political career. It's just the mind boggles, ladies and gentlemen. But as well, you had Pat Buck. He's been announced to former Progress, I think, producer from Progress. He's actually moved up to doing some producing roles for WWE. Similar to another producer from Progress, they're actually doing some stuff with NXT UK. Yeah, a lot of backstage people announced. In terms of injuries, though, no one on the current roster at the moment. You have Park. Hasn't been announced anything yet, but at a TNT Summer Explosion show, you see the picture doing the round. Like there's bone sticking out of his leg after a show. He had to be rushed to hospital. It looked grim. It looked very grim. And of course, he's been rumored to be heading back to AEW at some point down the line. Hopefully, they can stick that bone back in there and he can appear at maybe All Out. You would hope so, but yeah, we'll see. In terms of the people who are going under the knife at the moment, not permanent members of any wrestling roster right now. You have Ruby Riott. Like she has undergone successful shoulder surgery on her other shoulder. She had to have both of them done. Like that's how bad it was after her fights with Ronda Rousey. Poor girl. So a successful surgery. She should be back in WWE soon. Whether I forget where she got drafted. I'm gonna say SmackDown, but I could be wrong. Paige, of course, as well. She's been announced to once again be having neck surgery. So they were hoping from her last surgery that certain parts of her anatomy would heal up. They have not. So she's once again going under the knife. She's doing the manager role at the moment with the Kabuki Warriors, who I believe are going to be facing off on this week's Raw for the tag titles, which we'll get into the women's tag titles in a second as well. But yeah, hopefully they can help Paige live a more comfortable lifestyle now, especially since she's away from the ring. In terms of people leaving their respective promotions, after Triple Mania, Dr. Wagner, he actually had a hair versus mask match against Blue Demon Jr., which he lost, and he said that if he did lose that match, he would retire. Now, this could just be for AAA, but given how Dr. Wagner is up there in his wrestling career, he might just be done. And if there was ever a stage to leave, like the main event at Triple Mania in front of, I'm going to say like 100,000 fans from Mexico, man, that's a perfect way to go for him. Also, a person who announced that they're going to have their final match, Trish Stratus, the lady who has all the Stratusfaction in the world, she announced she was doing a media circuit in Toronto, which it's nice to do a media circuit in your hometown, I suppose. She can just travel and do what she wants. Like, fortunately, they're all in Toronto right now. But Trish announced that this would be her final match at SummerSlam, where she's facing off against Charlotte Flair. It feels weird to be saying, like, Trish has had a lot of final matches, but this might be the final match. They have a lot of potential to make Charlotte like a big mega heel in terms of if she beats the crap out of Trish. I don't know how they're going to do this. Like, I obviously see Charlotte getting the win on this one. Like, Trish will put on a great show, like, because she can still go. But I'm curious where they're going to go with that. And yeah, like Trish, she's been able to retire multiple times now at that point where she's still healthy and she's still able to live like a comfortable lifestyle without any like injuries from her wrestling career, as far as we're aware. But she's managed to take care of herself throughout that entire run that she had with WWE, and she's been able to come back and forth heaps of times. And yeah, but I wish more stars you could hear stories like that where they leave at the right time before they've damaged themselves to the point where like they're beyond repair in a lot of ways. But yeah, Trish Stratus final match. Not who I expected to be with, but you know what? Both those ladies are gonna. This could be like a low key match of the night, depending on how they go about it. So everyone should check out SummerSlam moving forward. Some other news, guys. A lot of news headlines that come out this week. I'm going to start with Bill Goldberg. So he's got a match at SummerSlam at the moment as well against Dolph Ziggler. He was announced he returned on this week's Raw after a little bit of chicanery with The Miz, Shawn Michaels, saying like, oh no, Miz is not going to be facing off against me. Dolph Ziggler's not going to be facing off against me. And then it was like Shawn Michaels was in the ring. He's like, it ain't me, brother. And then you hear Goldberg's music. The reveal was fantastic, and it's unlike WWE to actually get that right in a lot of ways, but happy to hear that. We found out how much he made from his stint, I should say, at Super Showdown. Over $1 million. That Saudi money it can change people's opinions on their wrestling careers right now. Yeah. And this is weird because that is more than his 2003-2004 paycheck for those entire 8 or so matches that he did, which is saying something because his entire run with that company, like when he got the world title and everything else, it's weird. Like it's not, he was earning like $3 million in his prime back in WCW, but that's a lot of money to throw at someone, especially in that later stage of their career. And it seems like they're really trying to push they're making Goldberg into this Bruno Sammartino type role where he's just going to come back, the lone gunslinger, coming back for one more fight again after Brock Lesnar and everything else. They need to make it, as long as they make it mean something, and this helps get rid of the thoughts of the Saudi Arabia show out of my mind, then okay, that's fine. Like, but it gives you the idea of like how much exactly they're actually paying the legends to come back, like the Shawn Michaels, like your Triple H's, like your Undertakers. Gives you an idea of just how much money they throw at these stars to actually appear in Jeddah to do all these shows, and it's disgusting. It is disgusting, but just how greedy some people can get, and just how people's morals can kind of go out the window depending on how many zeros are behind the check. But yeah, I will not touch upon Saudi Arabia anymore. We have a lot of SummerSlam changes this week. So, of course, we had the matches, of course, the Goldberg versus Dolph Ziggler. That was a very impromptu thing that happened at the last second. It was being rumored for a while. But, yeah, now we know. And we've only got about 10 matches actually announced at the moment for the SummerSlam card, which is very reasonable for WWE. I'm actually worried. Very, very reasonable, right? And Vince McMahon does have a habit of, lately, especially, changing things at the last second on SmackDowns, like rewriting the entire script like a couple hours before the shows. I think this last episode of SmackDown, it was only about 90 minutes before the show started, which is insane how they still managed to pull off the entire episode once he did that. Just imagine working for Vince, just like seeing him appear on an episode of SmackDown just like before the show starts, just like, oh crap, here he is about to ruin everything again. But in terms of the SummerSlam changes here, some matches that were planned for the show but were taken off included Roman Reigns versus Daniel Bryan. Like, the idea was that Rowan attacked Roman Reigns, tried to kill him, but the rumor is that he did it for Bryan, to take a quote from Rikishi there, and the idea was that they would have a match at SummerSlam. Well, that was the idea anyway, but we've taken a caller off that. Shinsuke Nakamura was meant to face Ali. Aleister Black was meant to face Sami Zayn. They've all been pulled out. Like, poor Sami Zayn. The dude's just getting kicked in the dick by Vince McMahon so many times. Like, for what? Supporting charities? Jesus Christ. Apparently, Drew McIntyre versus Cedric Alexander is being rumored right now, but there's nothing that's been announced yet. Apparently, the women's tag team title match that was on Raw, that was meant to happen at SummerSlam, but the match took place on Raw so that it wouldn't get lost in the shuffle. I think that was Paul Heyman's doing, which you can slowly see the changes that Paul Heyman is implementing to Raw and like to create the creative team. Like not so much SmackDown like with Eric Bischoff, because again he's not doing anything creatively. He's just the liaison between Fox and WWE at this point. That's all he's doing. But yeah, on a whim, Vince McMahon can actually change all these plans. And like you hear all this talk now how he hasn't really had much plans for the women's tag team division, which I am shocked by this unforeseen revelation. I mean, who would have seen that from the booking these past few months? And like, it's kind of obvious that you hear all this stuff happening from the Observer, how, yeah, he never wanted the titles out to begin with, and he hasn't had any plans for them, which, yeah, they had the plans with the Bellas when they kind of fell through. And yeah, I'm hoping that Paul Heyman can actually give those belts some legitimacy on Raw if they're not going to be given time on pay-per-views. I'm glad that they are on pay-per-views after we had a tag team title change, and as much as I am disheartened that the Iconics have been dethroned, like the Aussie pride in me has been crushed in a couple ways this week. But I'm glad at least that the title's actually being shown on the product. You know, I want that at least. But to think about just the volatility of one Vince McMahon, and to kind of enforce that, you have the latest interview from Chris Van Vliet. He interviewed Jimmy Jacobs, who former Ring of Honor wrestler, former WWE writer. He's now in Impact at the moment doing some creative stuff. But yeah, he got fired after the invasion by the Bullet Club, quote unquote, onto a Raw. He took a photo with the club, and he got fired for that, for a photo, just for a photo. But he talked to Chris Van Vliet about his involvement in the Kevin Owens Chris Jericho storyline, about the Festival of Friendship, which I love the Festival of Friendship. I thought that was great. But he's talking about the day he got fired, and he's saying that WWE is really fun except for that one black cloud that hangs over the place, and that's the crazy man. I love that you didn't have to even say the man, like the crazy man. We'll just leave it at that. We're going to acknowledge him by name. Just he's the crazy man that lingers around there. He'll peep his head around, just like, what are you doing? I love that. I love that sassiness, like from the zombie princess Jimmy Jacobs. Like you go, Jimmy. And it just speaks to the mindset of Vince McMahon. So on the one hand, I'll talk about the nice thing that you've heard. So unfortunately, last week, the late Harley Race passed away after a battle with cancer, and Vince McMahon paid for his final days in hospital. Like he paid for all of his medical expenses. Apparently, like the Medicare over there, like the health agencies over there, couldn't cover Harley Race towards his final days. And Trevor Murdoch, who was a student of Harley Race, called up WWE. Vince McMahon, within 10 minutes, he paid for the entire thing. He flew him over to the certain hospital. And yeah, on the one hand, Vince McMahon is capable of being a caring, considerate man. But on the other hand, he's just a crazy bastard. And sometimes the craziness kind of outweighs the nice person underneath, you know, like more often than not he's just out of his mind, like creatively, like psychologically. Yeah, he would be an interesting case study for any psychiatrist, my god. But you hear all these moves, and another thing he's as well as a ruthless businessman, because you hear all this talk. Now a couple of stuff that I heard which made me I was not happy hearing. So the first thing you hear is that WWE looks like it is interested in acquiring Fight TV, that they are interested in having meetings to try and buy the rights to Fight TV. Now, in terms of business moves, would be like, it's not illegal, but it would be the most biggest like kick in the dick for the indie wrestling scene, because Fight TV, not only do they air several combat sports like boxing, MMA, kickboxing, right? They air so many indie promotions, right? Ring of Honor, MLW, New Japan, AEW, interestingly enough, And a lot of small indie shows here, like, my God, there's some Australian promotions that actually are available on Fight TV, right? And if WWE were to actually acquire that service, it's possible that those wrestling deals could just be cut, right? And the indie scene would be floundering, right? Absolutely floundering if that were to happen. Right now, Fight TV have denied this on their social medias, but if there are meetings happening, like, you have to imagine that's where their mindset's at, and they'd just be like, you can imagine that they're doing this for AEW, but the ripple effect, if they were to actually do this, would be catastrophic for the indie scene, and to reassert that grip on that monopoly they have on the wrestling scene, to reassert that dominance. It sounds like such a Vince McMahon move. I was frothing when I heard that news. I was really not looking forward to it. You can see that idea being used for other things, because if they own Fight TV, that could be an avenue for a lot of their wrestlers to maybe get into the MMA and boxing side again. Like, with you have Bobby Lashley, who he wanted to try and do some more Bellator fights. You could have, like, Brock Lesnar. Like, maybe he could explore other avenues of going back into mixed martial arts again. You can see that maybe coming into another tiered system in the WWE network. Like, business wise, it would be a very smart decision. But in terms of the wrestling scene and the implications on how it will affect everyone else, it would be really bad. Like, some companies would have to make up their own networks. Like, Impact is at Impact Plus right now, right? AEW could do that. They might be able to, but in terms of their catalog, they have 3 shows. They've had technically 4 if you count All In, right? But they've had 3 shows, so they don't have a big, like, foundation of knowledge, like, foundation of content, I should say. There's so much knowledge there, my God. Like, it could leave a lot of promotions dead in the water. And again, you've got, like, MLW, who are just trying to, like, they're only just starting to make their first pay-per-view in November. I hope this doesn't come to pass. I hope this doesn't happen. And I hope this other news as well does not happen, because it looks like, according to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, the rumor is that NXT might be moving to Fox Sports 1, and apparently to Dave Meltzer, it's a done deal, which, dirt sheets, hearsay, take that what you will. And at the moment, you've got NXT is airing 1 month worth of pre-tape shows every Wednesday, right? And if that would change to weekly live broadcast, they'll go for 2 hours. Seemingly is to go head-to-head with AEW. Like, granted, NXT been a part of Wednesdays for ages, right? So you can't necessarily call it, like, the reason for it, but to have them be a part of Fox Sports during the same time, roughly, as when AEW could be doing their thing, I don't like it. And it begs the question as well. So if they're actually going to be a live show, then although Triple H is running it, there is a strong possibility that Vince McMahon would have to get involved in some capacity, right? And Vince McMahon, if you read all the rumors and everything else about him, does not watch NXT at all. He's left it entirely to Triple H, and it's been this nice little, this worst kept secret in the wrestling world about the pure art form of sports entertainment is NXT, and, like, the talent that they have there are phenomenal. And I'm worried that if this would actually happen, it would ruin the magic, right? And don't get me wrong, I want all those guys in NXT, all those guys and girls, to have as much opportunities as possible. But if they were to go live, right, yes, it would give them more exposure, which is fantastic. But in terms of the wrestling, the Wednesday Night Wars moving forward, if AEW starts growing, which it will, who are they going to blame? They're going to blame the show that is literally on the same day as them. They're going to blame NXT. And if Vince is in charge of NXT, if he has to get involved at some point, he might punish those stars. For what? For what? Like, they could incur the wrath of Vince McMahon for absolutely no reason. And I don't like the idea. I don't like the idea of it, and I want NXT to be like, go for longer. I want it to be 2 hours. I want them to showcase the very best of what the WWE roster is capable of. But man, I do not want to live in a world where Vince McMahon is actually telling the commentary team like Mauro Ranallo how to talk. Now, I do not want Mauro Ranallo to be the next Michael Cole in terms of how he's just going to be shoved down our throats. He'll be saying "Mamma Mia" every 5 seconds, right? I don't like it. I do not like it at all. A lot of moves that could be happening in the future of WWE. Like, one thing they have actually done definitely though, after a 20-year relationship with Uke, is that the video game developer who've done the 2K games, they've actually terminated this relationship and they're now partnered with Visual Concepts, right? So, which is interesting because it's been rumored that AEW might be hoping to partner with Uke in the future. It's been rumors that they might be doing a demo game for them. You have to imagine, with someone like Kenny Omega, who is a big gaming nut, if there were to be an AEW game at some point, it would be the gameplay would be phenomenal. Like, just from the people who actually, that there are people who actually care about it, right? So the idea of that, maybe that could be a reason for that change. But after 20 years, and I'll say it, I'm not a big fan of the 2K games. I'm not much of a gamer myself, but you don't really, after a while, those games get a little bit too repetitive in my eyes, and a lot of the gameplay, it's lost a lot of its luster over the past few years. If you are a hardcore gamer and you love those games, more power to you. I just feel like after a while it kind of lost its way with a lot of things. And yeah, if only relationships with WWE could end so civilly for a lot of their stars, because if it was that easy for their other stars, man, they wouldn't be in such hot water with the way they are at the moment. Because on the Observer Radio, when they was talking to a producer from Dark Side of the Ring and the Wrestlers, there was the idea about a union being formed for wrestlers for the sole reason of getting fired, right? And Dave Meltzer has actually been claiming that a lot of performers have actually asked him of ways to get out of their contracts by any means necessary. Failing drug tests, breaking the law, which Meltzer has advised against. He didn't, obviously that would be implicate him of some criminal activity, of course, accomplice and everything else. But people are thinking, if you think about it, so they have the wellness policy, and yes, they'll be taken out of shows and suspended and everything else, but they will still be under contract. They could get arrested like Jeff Hardy or Jimmy Uso, but WWE will release the statement saying they're responsible for their own actions, and they'll still be under contract. I'm not saying that Jimmy Uso and Jeff Hardy did those things to get out of their contracts, but I'm saying if that was the goal of a wrestler, then that's what they would do. And one thing that WWE are renowned for is being adamantly anti-union, and anyone attempting to form one could end up in a win-win scenario here, right? You can think of guys like Luke Harper, right? If this would work, they need someone to kind of rally the troops, and I hope it be Luke Harper. The idea of the fact that there is no union for the wrestlers at this point is mind-boggling to me. And you have, and people will throw names like AEW, which, yes, they have their roster are independent contractors. Chris Jericho is a permanent employee. I should point that out. But their wrestlers are only exclusive in America. They are allowed to do other shows, which, John Moxley actually confirmed as well. He can still wrestle for New Japan. He's still the United States champion. So when they move to TNT, he can still be the US champion in Japan, in New Japan, and kick ass over there. He can do anything else in the rest of the world. When it comes to America, they're just exclusively AEW property. That is the definition of it. Like, when the idea of an independent contractor is that a company does not rely on that specific employer, that specific roster talent for their business. Like, they don't rely on that person for their job. Otherwise, they're an employee. And if they did, like, man, you had who was it? You had to like talk about this like during the steroid case and everything else. Like, you had I'm gonna kill me. Like, one of the Hall of Famers. They tried to organize a union back in the early '90s, and of course John Oliver trying to get that talk going again. Like, it's sad. It's just sad to hear that the stars actually want to get out of the contracts by any means necessary, and it just shows like it should be illegal. Just the fact that all these stars, they want to just get out of the company, but WWE want to control every aspect of their life, essentially. And like, it could be even worse when they take control of their social media, if indeed that does happen. In terms of like, they don't want to have any other social media disasters throughout the career moving forward, if they are going to be having competition and everything else in the wrestling landscape. It's just weird. I'll talk about a couple other things. AEW have actually filed for another trademark. The latest trademark they've actually filed for is AEW Revolution. Now, all these trademarks, we have no idea what they mean just yet. But of course, we know that they trademark stuff like Tuesday Night Dynamite, Wednesday Night Dynamite, right? AEW, of course. There are a whole bunch of things that, again, we don't know what they're used for. And AEW Revolution could be for the new game, if that is the idea. That could be for that new game with Uke, if that was to come to pass. It could be the name of a pay-per-view, right? AEW Revolution. Like, yeah, apparently they're only going to do one more pay-per-view in 2019. They're only going to do like 4 or 5 a year, which is like the perfect amount to keep them special, to make them important, and not have them done every like 2 weeks, like WWE seem to do. It could be for the TV show. We don't know the name of it yet, but to be fair, if you're on a TNT network and you don't use the term Wednesday Night Dynamite, that's just a missed opportunity. Like, that is a waste of space. Like, it's either Wednesday Night Dynamite for me or nothing. Who am I kidding? I'm still going to watch it regardless. But I have no leverage here. I've got a couple other stories, guys, before I finish. Stephen Amell, he's actually spoken out at a convention and in a press circuit about All Out. So he's in his final season of Arrow at the moment. And for those of you big wrestling fans, he did appear at All In last year, where he faced off against Christopher Daniels. They had an amazing match. He actually came to Australia a couple months ago as part of Supernova. I tried to talk to him. Didn't happen. I tried to organize something. I did a media circuit. Did not come to pass, unfortunately. But I was one of those people who was going to try and ask him, is he going to be a part of All Out? And fortunately, someone else has actually asked him that question. And he's pretty much said no. So he's saying like his wife doesn't approve of his wrestling career right now. He says he risks divorce if he does, which that's fair enough. Wrestling isn't for everybody. But he's saying, I don't want to have to send an email to Greg Berlanti, who is the producer of Arrow, Mark Guggenheim, who is one of the executive producers, right? And James Bamford, who is one of the biggest directors, like biggest action directors on the CW that you'll ever see. He is, you watch some of the fight scenes in Arrow and they're just amazingly choreographed. Like, I'll get off no tangent. But apparently, after his match with Christopher Daniels last year, he fractured his hip, and they couldn't do anything about it, and it wouldn't heal. It didn't heal as fast as he thought it would, and apparently the episode of Arrow they had to film right after doing All In was a big action-heavy episode, and he kind of shot himself in the foot just in terms of having to do all this big, hard physical labor of doing his show, and then after he'd just done this grueling match with Christopher Daniels. So yeah, he says, until I'm done with the show, I'm staying out of the squared circle, which, now consider the phrasing there, until he's done with the show, which means that after he's done with Arrow, maybe he could take up a couple matches. I honestly think that in terms of star power, Stephen Amell would be a great grab for AEW TV. He could even just show up. He didn't have to do a match, but he could be a part of a storyline and then just do like a couple moves. He could do the Crossroads on freaking MJF. I don't know, somebody. To have Stephen Amell in the wrestling world after his history with the Elite, with Cody, with the whole Stardust thing, it would make sense. I would love it. I would I would love to see. I want to see Green Arrow in wrestling. Is that too much to ask? I want my comic love and my wrestling love to blur until they are one and the same. But yeah, for those of you who are wondering if you'll definitely pair All Out, not going to happen. Which is sad, but I'm sure they'll put on a great show in spite of all that. The last story I'm going to leave you guys, bit of a sad one, but it bears being said. So, of course, there was another mass shooting in America, the latest of which was in Dayton, Ohio. I think there was another attempted one in the news at the time of recording, which they're constant in America. Like it's as an Australian, we can say all this stuff like with our gun laws, and like I don't want to get into that. That's an argument for a completely different podcast. I do apologize, but what I'm getting at here is one of the people who helped stop the gunman in the Ohio shootings was actually an independent wrestler by the name of Jeremy Ganger. He stopped the shooter from entering a local bar that he was a bouncer at before police arrived. Pro Wrestling Sheet reported that he's one of the further 27 people that were injured in the attack by the gunman, so he did actually get shot at some point. Fortunately, not fatally. He just had a bunch of shrapnel wounds, I should say. Ganger is still new in his wrestling career, but to say that a pro wrestler actually stopped the gunman is, just shows the bravery of Jeremy Ganger, and just the bravery actually to face off against someone with an automatic rifle. It's just like, our thoughts go out to the families and the victims of anyone who was affected by that senseless display of violence in Ohio and anywhere, of course, with the constant announcements of mass shootings in America. Like it doesn't need to happen. It just doesn't. But you hear the stories about wrestlers when no one else defends. No one else is there to defend someone. For some reason or another, like you hear stories of wrestlers like being in the right place at the right time and actually being able to help people in times of need. And this is actually a lovely display. Obviously, like if not for Jeremy Ganger, who knows how many more people might have lost their lives in that mass shooting. So from me, from the B Plus here, want to extend gratitude to him for actually stepping in there. And again, it's just senseless what's happening over there. I don't mean to be so dour, ladies and gentlemen, before we end our podcast here, but I just need to highlight that and just show my respect, if nothing else. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have for you today. If you want to follow me on all the socials, I'm at Mr Myster1ous with 1-7I. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Hit me up. We'll have a chat about this week in all the weird, wacky wrestling news that we've had. If you want to follow us collectively here at the B+, we are at the B+ Wrestle on Twitter because wrestling wouldn't fit. The B+ Wrestling everywhere else. Make sure to follow us, guys. We're an okay bunch, if I do say so. Remember, we have our Patreon. Any amount you could donate would be greatly appreciated so we can keep giving you all what you want, when you want, highlighting the very best of Australian wrestling while keeping you up to date on all the wrestling news from around the globe. Like, share, subscribe, hit that 5-star review. I've been Mr Myster1ous for all the rest, and I'll see you later.